It's Friday, August 28th, and time for your Barbados Today morning news update. One of Barbados's main labor unions warns that the severance fund could be crippled as the national insurance scheme faces the possibility of claims from tens of thousands of laid-off workers in the coming weeks. This assessment comes from General Secretary of the Barbados Workers Union, Senator Tony Moore, who also disclosed that some severed workers have not received unemployment benefits since May.
There are workers who have not received a check, as reported to us, since May. There are workers who were off from the middle of March and who had to wait until the end of June for their first payment. So while we appreciate that COVID-19 has thrown everything in a tailspin and it has made what have been challenging operations even more challenging, and that includes the NIS. We have a real problem, an immediate problem that needs to be fixed to ensure that workers can access the benefit where they are entitled to it. And where they're not entitled because of the situation I mentioned previously, that's a problem that also needs to be addressed, because if there are no jobs on the horizon in tourism or otherwise, the government still has a responsibility to its people. So the challenge for us is, how do we address this, and what is the BW's position in this? The BW's position is that we must address the sustainability challenge of our national insurance system. And that's a priority, and it's a priority for all citizens of Barbados.
Meantime, the Barbados Workers Union has cancelled its annual Delegates Conference this year due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the associated restrictions. This means that council members will serve for another year. This comes as General Secretary Senator Tony Moore reported that the Labour Union has seen an increase in the number of people seeking representation in recent months, as well as an increase in membership.
The decision not to have a conference was not one that was taken easily. Of course, you know, the country was in shutdown for the better part of 3 months, and it meant that once we came back out of that lockdown period, we would have had a very narrow window within which to meet a number of our constitutional requirements in holding a conference. But we also reached out to our divisions, who comprise our conference on an annual basis, by vote correspondence, to have them indicate their views. We looked at a number of options, virtual format and so on, and these had implications for honoring the union's constitution as outlined in our rules and regulations. So a large majority of our workers from the divisions responded, supporting the council's recommendation not to hold a conference this year.
Starting next year, August 27th will be known as a Jackie Opel Day in celebration of one of Barbados's most iconic cultural figures. Culture Minister John King made the disclosure as a digital monument honoring the King House Pooch was unveiled at his final resting place in the Westbury Cemetery on Thursday. Jackie Opel, born Dalton St. Clair Bishop, would have been 83 years old yesterday.
As a representative of government now, I want to be able, and I'm proud to say that starting next year, this day, August 27th, will be officially known as Jackie Opel's Day. And I am elated. I really want to thank the cabinet for agreeing to this. I thank the artists who came into the office to ask if we could get this done, and cabinet has responded, so I'm very happy about that. But I think from here onwards, it's going to be more than what we're doing this evening. Adja, as you quite rightly said, there are some other things that we have to do. When you look at this area, you have Rihanna Drive just next door, and then just up the highway you have the Mighty Guina Highway. So this is becoming an area that really celebrates the musical greatness of our country. And I'm hoping that as time goes on that we can fill these spaces with other iconic people, Richard Stout and Tony Grisette, and some of our younger people who are coming out, the songwriters, the producers, other people, just to make people understand the important contribution that these people have made and continue to make to the musical landscape.
The Antigua and Barbuda government has taken a decision to write off all debts owed to it by LEAT and is now hoping that other stakeholder countries will follow suit. More in this report from ABS News.
Because Cabinet has decided to write off all of Antigua and Barbuda's debt or owed by LEAT, amounting to some $8.5 million. The monies were split mainly between the Antigua and Barbuda Airport Authority, APUA, and taxes as a result of ticket sales. Of course, this was $8.5 million owed by LEAT to Antigua and Barbuda. The government has decided to write that off. Government is not yet sure if other stakeholder countries will do the same by writing off LEAT's debt to those countries, but is encouraging them to do the same.
Whether or not it gets the consent and approval and agreement of those other governments is a matter for their own consideration. We're hopeful that it would, because it will give LEAT a new lease on life to be able to rid itself of some of these long-term liabilities that have been the bugbear of its operations.
Now, without the burden of these debts, the Information Minister believes LEAT would be in a better position to craft out its routes based purely on commercial considerations.
So if LEAT is required to fly into a territory and it is not feasible for it to do so without the guarantees, the load factor guarantees, then those would have to be put in place. And so a host government may not expect LEAT to fly into their territory without making those types of commitments.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from the region, we head over to Kingston, where a financial analyst says the recent revision of the economic forecast by the Bank of Jamaica comes as no surprise. On Wednesday, the central bank governor projected that Jamaica's economy would contract by between 7 and 10% during the 2020-2021 fiscal year as a result of the impact of COVID-19. We get more in this report from Television Jamaica.
The BOJ had predicted a decline of 4 to 7% earlier this year. Now, speaking on Thursday on the Morning Agenda program, financial analyst Dennis Chong said in April he predicted that the economy would have declined between 7.5% to 20%. He is questioning the accuracy of some of the BOJ's main reasons for the revised growth forecast.
The main reason for the decline is going to be tourism, which was obvious, and the unemployment, right? So if we actually had responded differently in some respects, we could have saved on that unemployment downturn. But
responded differently how?
Well, I have never thought that the response to it sustainably was going to be that, you need to go into, so much of a lockdown mode. For example, St. Catherine, the locking down of St. Catherine, I think, was the Achilles heel in the economic outturn.
He says enforcement of measures in Jamaica and across the world instead of lockdowns would have been more effective in managing the spread of the virus. BOJ Governor Richard Biles told yesterday's quarterly media briefing that the worsened outlook is largely associated with the virus's resurgence in major trading partner countries such as the United States and updated assessments of the impact of the crisis on some local sectors.
And finally, on the international front, the French Prime Minister introduces a series of measures, including increased testing and compulsory face coverings in Paris in response to a steep increase in coronavirus infections. More from Reuters TV.
French Prime Minister Jean Castex warned Thursday that the country's latest coronavirus outbreak could spiral out of control if swift action is not taken. Castex said the country's R number of infections has risen to 1.4, meaning that every 10 people with the virus will infect another 14. An R number above 1 can lead to exponential growth. The Prime Minister said infections are particularly rising among young people, and with the academic year starting next week, Castex urged grandparents not to pick up their grandchildren from school.
I can't say I'm jumping for joy because we had planned for my grandson not to stay for lunch at school and that I would come and get him. We must adapt. We gain nothing from doing nothing. If we want to contain the situation, we must do what the government tell us to do.
Even the country's soccer superstars aren't immune from the emerging wave, with France midfielder Paul Pogba left out of the squad for next month's Nations League matches after testing positive for COVID-19. The dangers for France are clearly visible over the border in Spain. There, hospitalizations have increased across the month of August as the country struggles to contain its second wave.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.